Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, diving back into this Michigan defensive coordinator search and talking about some top candidates that have emerged for Sherrone Moore in this Michigan program over the last couple of days, and kind of talking about what we're looking for in this defensive coordinator hire. And at the end of the day, we've talked about this a lot over the last couple of weeks. And as a Michigan fan, you look at this Michigan defense and say, this has got to be one of the most attractive jobs in all of college football. One, you look at the personnel that is going to be back in 2024. And as much as the national media wants to write this team off, saying that it's lost a ton of NFL talent to the NFL draft, that might be true. But you look at the talent that is going to be back in 2024, guys like Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, guys like Will Johnson, Rod Moore coming back. This is, again, going to be one of the most talented defenses that you see in the 2024 year, representing an opportunity for a defensive coordinator to come in and kind of hit the ground running. But the second part that makes this job so attractive is you take a look at the previous defensive coordinators for this Michigan program, right? Mike McDonald, now a head coach in the NFL. Jesse Minter, probably one of the rising stars in the NFL, going to the NFL as a defensive coordinator. There has been a ton of success that these previous Michigan defensive coordinators had, and I think represents an opportunity for this next defensive coordinator to kind of have another stepping stone in terms of expediting their career and what they want to do in their coaching career. Really excited to get into this one. Want to talk about a few candidates, talk a little bit about what you're looking for this Michigan defensive coordinator hire. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. And this truly has been a wild last couple of weeks. And many of you guys know I'm a massive Michigan fan, have been having a blast talking about these coaching candidates. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support, the amount of input, the amount of comments. It means the world. This is why I love doing it, learning from you guys, talking ball with you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear your feedback in the comments section. And without further ado, I want to get into this. And I want to start with a talking point that I've seen emerge on the message boards and on Twitter a lot that I don't necessarily agree with, and that is hiring a defensive coordinator that you want to see stick around for 5+ years. And at the end of the day, you look at where Michigan is as a program, and you look at the other top programs across college football, Nick Saban when he was at Alabama, right? Kirby Smart at Georgia. When you are a top program that is experiencing as much success as Michigan has had the last couple of years, your coordinators are going to be primed for, they're going to be very attractive head coaching candidates. They're going to be very attractive NFL coach candidates. And so when you're looking to make this hire, I think you have to kind of understand that if this coach comes in and does a really good job, they're going to attract interest for other coaching positions, kind of working their way up the coaching hierarchy. And you look at Nick Saban at Alabama, and you look at Kirby Smart at Georgia. If your coaches that you're hiring around you are not working their way up, think about a guy like Dan Lanning at Georgia, you're probably making the wrong hire. So I don't think the number one issue that Sherrone Moore should be thinking about is, oh, you want to get a defensive coordinator that's going to stay here for 10+ years, because if that defensive coordinator is staying there for 10+ years, that probably means they're not doing a good enough job where they're getting outside interest for kind of moving up that coaching hierarchy. So I think you should just be looking at hiring the best defensive coordinator that's going to come in and have a ton of success. And if you have to replace them in 2 to 3 years, one, that probably means you made a really good hire. And two, you're probably going to be able to get another very, very good coach as your next defensive coordinator. Now, getting into some of the options that you want, I think the first one, I think a fan favorite, including my favorite, is Chris Hewitt from the Baltimore Ravens. And I think the number one thing we're talking about with this Michigan coaching staff and what we want to see heading into 2024 is continuity, right? You've seen this program consistently kind of take that next step year after year after year. You want to see that continuity, especially on the defensive side of the football, stay there. And a guy like Chris Hewitt, obviously the Baltimore Ravens tree is extremely attractive, but you even take away the Baltimore Ravens background. I'm a massive fan of Chris Hewitt and kind of how he's moving up as a coach, right? He comes into Notre Dame as an assistant strength and conditioning coach in 2023 and consistently moves his way up the college ranks, goes to the NFL, has been with Baltimore for the last 10 years, and has consistently moved up that coaching ranks within the Baltimore Ravens. This is a guy that has had success pretty much every position that he's been at as a coach. So you talk about one, getting a up-and-coming coach in Chris Hewitt. That certainly is the case, but more importantly, kind of continuing that continuity from that Baltimore Ravens defensive tree, I think is also massive. And you take a look at the most success that Michigan has had the last 3 years on the defensive side of the football, I think it comes from having that NFL background on the defense, being extremely multiple, having a ton of different looks, doing a lot of different things in terms of blitz packages and coverage packages that you don't see a ton at the college level. And you go back to the Don Brown where we were just kind of exclusively playing man coverage. And we had solid defenses, but we couldn't really crack that top upper echelon because it was just a little too bland, right? You take a look at what Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter have done in terms of revolutionizing what Michigan wants to do on defense. I mean, that's what you want to continue to see. And then Chris Hewitt with that NFL background, with the Baltimore Ravens background, certainly helps that continuity in terms of what you're trying to do. Chris Hewitt, in my mind, one, a young up-and-coming coach. Two, obviously familiar with the scheme and what Michigan wants to do. I think would be an absolute no-brain hire for Sherrone Moore in this Michigan program. The next guy I want to talk about here is Joe Cullen. There's been a lot of buzz around Joe Cullen and potentially being the next defensive coordinator for this Michigan program. A couple of things that I love about Joe Cullen. One, Super Bowl champ. Like, I think that you take a look at, I think one of the biggest questions when you go to the NFL for your coaching is, can they recruit at the college level? When you have that background and that pedigree of being a Super Bowl champ, I think that's massive, right? Wearing that ring around your finger when you're walking into recruits' homes, walking into their high schools, I think that carries a lot of weight. And in the world where NIL seems to be such a big factor in terms of recruiting, at the end of the day, you look at two things that are still going to be extremely important to these high school recruits. One, winning national championships, competing at the highest level. But number two, being developed to go to the NFL. When you have a coach that has had as much success as Joe Cullen has had at the NFL ranks, I think that carries a lot of weight because you know what it looks like to be an NFL player. You know what it takes to be an NFL player. And so when you have a coach that has as much around in the NFL as Joe Cullen does, I think recruiting is going to be just fine. And you look at Joe Cullen as a coach and what he's done, more of a defensive line background, where Chris Hewitt's more of a secondary background. I mean, Joe Cullen at Kansas City just won a Super Bowl last year, competing for another Super Bowl this Sunday, and has done a phenomenal job with that Kansas City defensive line, right? Chris Jones, obviously one of the best NFL defensive linemen in the country, done a phenomenal job with former Michigan Wolverine Mike Dana as well. And so I think Joe Cullen is also a guy that's checking off a lot of boxes in terms of the NFL background and the complexity of the scheme that he's going to bring to Michigan. Now, I think the one knock is it's not necessarily that Baltimore Ravens tree, but you are still getting that NFL background of a complex defense that's going to be doing a lot of things. And this Michigan defense has already kind of been in that NFL scheme for the last 3 years. And so you think that there's going to be kind of a seamless transition to the next, or when Joe Cullen comes in. So I think Joe Cullen makes a ton of sense too. And I think the last thing that I think gets overlooked is just promoting from within. And you've seen Michigan do this on the offensive side of the football, right? Elevating Kurt Campbell to the offensive coordinator spot. You elevate a guy like Coach Newsome to the offensive line coach. I mean, to me, that makes a lot of sense why Michigan did that on offense. And I think it would make a lot of sense for Michigan to do that on the defensive side of the football too, right? Mike Elston, Steve Clinkscale, two guys that have done phenomenal work for this Michigan program. You look at where Michigan has had the most success on the defensive side of the football. It's been in the back end and the secondary, and it's been on the defensive line. And so why wouldn't you want to continue that kind of trend with elevating the two position coaches that have probably done the most or had the most success within this Michigan program? And I wouldn't I wouldn't necessarily think that you just go co-DCs there. Keep Mike Elston as your defensive line coach, Steve Clinkscale as your defensive backs coach, and have them be co-DCs for Michigan in 2024. One, you're keeping that continuity. Again, these coaches have coached within this defense the last couple of years, so they know what Michigan wants to do. More importantly, they already have the relationships within the locker room. I think one of the biggest concerns for a lot of Michigan fans is if you go outside the program, what does it look like in terms of losing players in the transfer portal? You want to keep these guys within the program. That has been what Michigan has had so much success with the last couple of years. They don't have guys leave the program. They have guys stay. They have guys trust the process. They have guys that trust the development. If you kind of hire from within, you're kind of mitigating the concern that people are going to leave in the transfer portal by elevating a guy like Klink or a guy like Mike Elston. And at the end of the day, to kind of tie a bow on this conversation, when I look at Michigan going out and hiring a defensive coordinator, like there's not a lot of bad options, right? I think Chris Hewitt is a phenomenal option. I think Joe Cullen is a phenomenal option. And I think elevating Klink and Elston to that co-defensive coordinator role is also a really good option. It's a very attractive job. I think Michigan's in a very, very good spot. And I'm kind of trusting the process a little bit with Sherrone Moore. He's obviously doing his due diligence in terms of what defensive coordinator he wants to roll with. Coach Sherrone Moore said he's going to do it his way. He wants to continue the progress that Michigan's made, continue that culture that we've established, but he wants to do it his own way. And I think he's doing his due diligence in terms of building this coaching staff. I think he's putting a lot of thought into what he wants this program to look like. Really excited to see how this shakes out. I think we'll have a lot more to talk about over the next couple of days and weeks, not only with the defensive coordinator position, but what do the position coaches look like? What are the assistants we're bringing in? Mike Hart, obviously, some question marks if he's going to stick around with this program. Really exciting time for Michigan. We'll continue to update you guys as the news continues to kind of roll out. Wanted to update you guys, give you guys some of my thoughts on what this defensive coordinator search is looking like. Again, would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. If y'all do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.